Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the insurance panel. If you haven't figured out already, we've got Justin Brock with us. Maybe Ryan can take this and then put this in the front and then put whatever Justin had back the last 7 minutes behind that, but doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. Thanks, Ryan,
Thank you, Ryan.
for all your help. Yeah, you got a lot of work to do this time. But with us always is the famous Nick Frumpkin. And then we have the famous Justin Brock. And if you haven't figured out now, we're going to be talking about branding.
Conversations and how they build, but it's not more valuable than like a conversation with you guys or a conversation with people that I know have some sort of center of influence that I can build a relationship with, and we can grow upon that. But it is more valuable than a conversation with somebody that I don't know at all.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes you have a conversation with somebody you don't know and it turns into a great relationship.
Sure.
But I mean, it's like digging for gold, you know?
Right.
But like after you built your brand, people just come to you like left and right? I mean, now it's
YouTube and so like they all feed each other. You know, YouTube feeds Facebook, Facebook feeds YouTube, organic search feeds YouTube, feeds Facebook, and it just it grows. Like one thing that I don't do a lot of, like I know some groups on Facebook will go and like the reason, like you'll see some groups that'll have double the members of mine with the same or less engagement as ours. But one thing we never really did was go out and like invite people to the group. Other than like if somebody added me and they were talking to me about Medicare and they said, hey, I saw you on YouTube, then I might say, well, you should be in our group, and I'll invite them. But I don't go out and like, I'm going to add 100 insurance agents and invite them to my group. And that's what a lot of people do. And I know early on there was even people that were hiring people on Fiverr to go and message people on Facebook and invite them to their group. But the engagement in those groups wasn't very good because they didn't find it for a purpose.
Right.
So our engagement, like there's one, I won't name the name of it, but there's a group on Facebook that's kind of known as being a big insurance group, not Insurance Soup. Theirs is awesome. They're the Cadillac insurance group, but it's mostly P&C. But there's another one that's probably a third of that size that's kind of known as being a big insurance group, but their engagement is the same as ours at a third of their size as far as people in it. So, but it's because we focus more on content to get people rather than just inviting to solicit to.
Yeah. And that's a way better build. I mean, I see so many groups that are like, we're this big group, but a lot of groups years ago, you're able just to add people. You didn't even have to message them and invite them to it. You just added them to it and they're automatically part of the group. So now people are like, man, we've got this big old group. And it's like, wait a second, you really too much. You know what I mean?
What you can do to test them is go to a profile that's not a member of any group. Like if you had a fake Facebook profile, go click on one like you're going to join it, and it'll tell you the stats about it. And one of the stats it'll say is how many members and how many posts a day there are.
Right. So, right. And you can see if it's actually an active group.
Exactly. Like you can see groups 3 times the size of Medicare Gurus with the same amount of daily posts as ours. And so like engagement is more important, you know? Yeah. And I've heard like Taylor Dobby and Michael McCormick talk about that. So keeping your group highly engaged is why it grows, and why it grows organically, because Facebook. And now a big problem I have now is because ours grows so good and it has Medicare in the name. I have tons of Medicare beneficiaries trying to join the group. So we have the questions, and I'm telling people like, got to answer the questions. And it's not because I'm trying to be a asshole and kick people out, but I'm like, I don't want a bunch of Medicare beneficiaries coming in there, because while we're all talking about how to help them, the conversation of compensation and money and stuff comes up, and it just is not really crossed well.
It's not the best. Not the best thing.
I've had Medicare beneficiaries early on that would join, and I was like, this is not a good fit, you know. So we created a separate group for them that we try to keep agents out of. And I actually encourage like everyone to do that. If you have clients, create a group for your clients so that you can, you know, grow this like organic group of your own clients that are on Facebook. And then like anytime you do a YouTube video for clients, you throw it in there, and it just kind of, it's a machine of generating viewership and cross, you know, collaboration of your platforms.
So one thing Nick and I always talked about is starting the record button without even knowing it. So we've been recording for like the last 5 to 7 minutes because there's usually gold content that's built in there, and everything that you just said was massive gold.
I noticed it was recording. I do the same thing. I start mine on local record automatically.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do pull better info before people are even thinking about being interviewed because they're you come on and you're talking about like, hey, here's the pain points of my morning. And that turns out those pain points are things that people want to know because it's how
life works.
We're all dealing with the same stuff, right?
Yeah. So and then we have the famous Justin Brock, and if you haven't figured out now, we're going to be talking about branding, and what Justin has done is quite incredible. I remember meeting you at the first 8% Nation, right? And I think at that time Medicare Gurus was at like 1,200 members, maybe 1,300 members, but now it's like well over 3,000 members.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about it. It's not really, you didn't really build it based on like invite. It was more content driven, and it organically grew over the last couple of years. And that engagement in that group is awesome. So we want to talk about building a brand, but there's two types. There's the online brand, and then there's also the brick and mortar brand, which is what you built as well. And I know Nick wanted to talk to you about that because it's completely different than what most people are doing.
Yeah.
Well,
in the insurance world.
I mean, and the thing is, like, I'm not, and for me, my own personal interest, I'm not all that interested in recruiting a bunch of agents and building an empire in terms of, that kind of stuff. Like, I do this because for me, this is fun. And when it stops being fun, I'll probably stop doing it. But like the building a brand that faces other agents is cool, but for me less interesting. Like, but the ability to build a brand that actually generates you business from a client side, I think is actually really an interesting idea. And in the final expense space is something that people don't do, and maybe for good reasons. The final expense clientele is a different type of clientele, but there's a lot of people who watch what we do that are not strictly final expense agents, that are doing P&C and doing term and doing Medicare and doing all that kind of stuff. And honestly, it's not something that I know anything about. I've never had a brick and mortar. The only time I've ever really worked with any kind of real branding was when I worked for the insurance company. So yeah, I think that's a really fascinating idea. I know a couple of guys are getting together that I know of to pool their money and rent out some office space. And they're planning for this AEP to do a big mail drop with the intent of driving people into their office space. And I know that that's something similar, at least, to what you do or have said that you've done in the past. So that's kind of where we started with this whole idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the thing about branding is once you believe in branding, you can use it for any concept. So most of the time, people who build a good brand maybe don't even realize that they're doing it at the time. It's just that the way that they market happens to overlap with building a brand. And that's kind of what happened to us, using traditional print, radio, television, newspaper, whatever. I'm not saying I used all those, but any of those types of advertisings, and then social media. One of these days they're going to call Facebook traditional media because it's so integral in just getting in front of people. Those types of advertising sections can build a brand. I think the biggest thing is not like your logo and your color schemes and all that. Although I think to some degree it helps to have a uniform front so people notice you faster. Sure. But it in the long run is all about a personal brand, or being a person that people repetitively see, recognize, and begin to think of as an authority person. And that can be in the consumer space or somewhere else. With final expense, I think that the branding is happening. I mean, Alex Trebek, is the big, final expense advertising thing. I think they continue to pump all that money into that because it works for them. I think that most final expense exclusive agents don't do it because of the way that they were brought into it. And there are higher quality, I'm not saying like rich people buying final expense, but there are higher quality prospects that purchase final expense insurance. I know because I sell Medicare supplements to people who have their house paid for and they have their cars paid off and they're drawing their, $2,000 a month, and they're not in that super poverty. They're not rich, but they're comfortable. They've paid everything off of their life. They worked hard. They may have a pension. They have a Social Security. They have a little savings, and they're still buying final expense insurance from us. We don't do a good job of actively marketing it to our clients, but even without asking, by going through the numbers with MedSup, we get asked quite a bit about it ourselves. So, and here's what they ask. They don't ask final expense. They ask, we need some life insurance. And what they 9 times out of 10 ask us for is, I just need 10 or 20,000, 10, 20, 30,000.
Right.
Probably buying bigger final expense policies. We do it more 20, 25, 30, than the 10, 5, and 2, out there. But I think that final expense agents, when they come into it on the direct mail side, psychologically, there's a different response rate in those old school cookie cutter direct mail campaigns of who is actually going to fill that out and send it in, because you wouldn't fill one out and send it in.
Never. I mean, and that's something that we say all the time is like, we're not mailing to people who are like us. We're mailing to people who would fill out a card, walk it out to their mailbox, mail it away, and hope somebody calls.
Yeah.
And that's not who most agents are, hopefully.
Yeah. And so when you begin to brand, and of course I do, and I know Nick is doing some Medicare, MedSup.
Yeah, and have been. Yeah.
When you go after a MedSup client, you can do the direct mail thing. I started off doing like cookie cutter direct mail MedSup rate cards, and I got a mixed block. Some of those people were very nice, and but a lot of the ones that were, and affluent is a weird word in this market because I don't think very many of them at all are wealthy, but like I'm saying, house paid off, cars paid off, little nest egg. Yeah, comfortable, middle class type of retired couples. Sometimes they would fill it out and send it in, but they were under some impression that it was going to go to, the government, and they were going to get a package in the mail or something because they didn't read all the little fine print. So I used to go out and I'd do that. And of course you could get past that little barrier of entry and get in and then tell them like, hey, you're overpaying for your MedSup, and sell it. And then you maybe capture some of the savings with a life insurance policy sometimes. And that was the way we did it. Now we market to Medicare because it's a pain point. I think final expense more often is an active sale process where you're saying, you're kind of creating the need. Some people already think they need it and already want it. But a lot of times good final expense agents are creating the need for burial. I've seen the flip charts and things that, are commonly used, and they're like, creating this need. With Medicare, most of the time, we're dealing with people who are turning 65 or retiring, so they know they need some sort of health coverage transition, or we're dealing with somebody that already has a MedSup or Medicare Advantage plan, and we're trying to get them a better one, a better price, a better benefit package, whatever. So it's a different thing. We're dealing with those pain points and making it better. I think with the branding side of the direct mail, it just never builds up other than, maybe if you do a really good job of keeping in touch with those clients, keeping a database of them, and then you start mailing some newsletter to them or something like that. But I think with final expense, that people are trained it's so transactional, they don't do a good job of nurturing their book, not realizing how much cross-selling opportunity there is. How many of those people would say, hey, you sold me one on me, and I need one on my husband, or I need a life policy on my daughter, or I need health insurance for my daughter. And then if you can start selling some health insurance, ancillary, Medicare, and it all feeds one another. Just like earlier we were talking about all the different media outlets feeding one another. I feel like your customers do the same. Their only need in the world is not life insurance.
No.
And there's a lot to sell them. So
no, and I mean, and one of the things that I tell this to other final expense agents that I talk to all the time. If you sell a life insurance policy to somebody, it really is the easiest thing in the world to just say, hey, by the way, we also do a ton of Medicare stuff. Almost everybody we work with wants to talk to somebody about Medicare. If you'd like, I'd be happy to go over that with you also.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to say. And so many people just say, oh yeah, actually, please,
Yeah.
you know?
And
And
we do
then,
the exact opposite on when we lead in with Medicare.
right.
We've started to. We haven't effectively done it in the past, but now I've told people, like, instead of like trying to hard sell a final expense policy and everyone, just at the end say, by the way,
Mhm.
we also specialize in helping people shop life insurance, annuities, 401k rollovers, investment options. And we're saying the investment options because
Mhm.
sometimes they don't know what the hell an annuity is.
Right, right.
So,
But yeah, and it's such an easy, it's a really easy thing to do. And, you know, without buying any additional leads, without really even looking for it, just adding that into the end of every single conversation I have with somebody. You know, I had 2 to 3 Medicare sales every week, you know, and that's, I mean, that's good. Like
yeah.
it's zero extra work other than, well, gee, I've just given another sales presentation. Like that's not, you know, that's not a hardship. Um, but you talked about nurturing your book of business and doing stuff like that. And I know that's something that I am bad about. And I don't know very many final expense agents that are doing that at all until the coronavirus hit. And then suddenly everybody's scrambling to finally develop that relationship with people that they sold life insurance to 5 years ago.
Right.
What are you guys doing in terms of like are you doing newsletter mailings? Like how do you guys handle that kind of stuff?
So we do an annual newsletter in September, right at the end of September, where we try to get it out right before AEP.
Mm-hmm.
That one's an actual print one, and in that one we mail either a magnetic business card or a magnetic calendar.
Mm-hmm.
We try to do the ones that are just one sheet, not the ones with the tear off sheets, because people like those like clean looking ones on their fridge. We do that because another branding piece. I mean, like when I used to go to houses years ago, you'd be surprised how many people we had sent those things to had them on their refrigerator. And, you know, they like if Nick sold them a life policy 5 years ago, never sent them anything like that. And then they said, gosh, I need a life policy on so-and-so, or I need to know, I want to get some additional life insurance. And then they were like, I would like to call Nick, but I don't have his number.
Right.
Because they don't keep a business card normally.
Right.
Those little magnetic ones just so much more likely to be there for us. So it just keeps it. So and then the same thing, like when people are calling them to try to change their med sup, and they'll get all the information from somebody on the phone and then go call me. And I'm like, he told
Right.
me, you know, this Aetna G, you know, I don't want to do this business with people I don't know, but is that a better one? And I'm like, actually, he's right. It is about time to shop. We were going to call you soon anyway, but we can go ahead and look at it, you know,
Right.
and we, you know, and we, I'm sure they're thinking that's SOB, but honestly, we earned that relationship so that they're having to work against the relationship we've built.
Right.
And other things we do, quarterly email newsletters. We do email blasts as well, just kind of periodically, where we send them, like if I put up a new video, like the Medicare Supplement Plan K one I did the other day, we'll send that out to everybody, you know, just to keep them. And it also serves another purpose of keeping traffic coming to the video, potentially back to our website, and kind of helping our website grow. So it's like you're staying in touch, but then you're feeding your electronic machine as well. And so that's another thing we do. We also now, and we were not historically very good at this, but now that we have the staff to, we have a couple of people that are constantly calling a certain number every day to check to see if they can, you know, help them with something. They can rewrite, you know, we're not churning because we're not going in and calling and saying, hey, it's time to rewrite your policy. We call to check on them. And if they start complaining about the rate or something, we say, well, you know, let's see if there's anything new out or better for you. And then another thing we started doing recently is we use a CRM that reminds us of people's birthdays coming up. And then I have Mallory in our office calls everybody on their birthday or the closest weekday to their birthday to tell them happy birthday.
Oh, nice.
From our company. And then this latest thing we're working on right now is we use email blast service MailChimp, but we're working on our CRM has a built-in email feature for things that happen, like, okay, you have an upcoming 65th birthday. So we're going to it's going to automatically send those people an email that has a template that says something. Then we can also have an automated email for reviews from our CRM. So every time we add a new record to the CRM, within 2 weeks of it being 2 weeks after it's added, sends them an email and says, hey, how was your got a big green thumbs up and a red thumbs down. How was your experience? If they click the red thumbs down, it just sends them somewhere to like say, well, oh, well, we want to know what we can do better, give us feedback. And it doesn't direct them to a review site if they're going to give us a negative review.
Right.
Green thumbs up, they click, it goes over to leave us a review either on Facebook or Google.
Nice.
And that's just a way to drive it. And then the other follow-up email is automated birthday emails, just tell them happy birthday. So we're trying to always stay in touch with them without actually having to like personally call them. We don't really have the agents calling the clients, unless they're like a newer agent where we're kind of getting their feet wet by calling existing book, because everybody knows it's a lot easier to call them than to call cold lead. But I want my primary agents that are good at selling, trying to get new business all the time.
Bringing the new business in.
So that, I mean, it took a long time to build that. I'm positive. I mean, you just recently said you started switching into that more SEO, Google search type optimization. But early on, like, how long did it take you to build that brick and mortar? Because like I've seen videos online, and maybe we can pull it and just like do a snapshot in here real quick, and maybe he can write it in there. But it's like, how long did it take you, and like what steps did you take to build that kind of brand? Because I remember you saying like people would drive like hours just to go to Tupelo, Mississippi to see.
We've had some people come drive over an hour. We frequently have people driving 45 minutes to come to our office. So first of all, some of that is AEP, creates a little bit of a frenzy. But we want, when they think frenzy and I got to make decisions, we want them to think, come to us or call us.
Right.
One of the, I think that it's just a long-term approach. Like, I don't suspect that anyone could replicate that in a year's time.
Yeah. I don't want people watching this to think that if they just do these steps and then overnight. I know it took you years.
Yeah.
I think you said you've done television ads, right? You've done Facebook campaigns that had the same, like you said, color scheme that made it recognizable. Did you ever do any billboards?
Yeah.
Right. So
we've done it all. And here's, the concept of advertising, and we've evolved an overall long-term image of how advertising works, and why we believe in the brand is because we've seen it happen. It's like every time we would do an ad, you think, what's the ROI on that ad?
Right.
The immeasurable result is what you're doing to, get into the subconscious of so many people. And so, if we're running television ads, and I have people that are calling me that are turning 65 now, but they've been seeing that ad for 6 years.
Right.
So they weren't in our demographic before, but they've been seeing it for 6 years now, So you have to think about, like, when you decide to advertise, you got to come up with a budget, and you backwards budget into it. How much can I afford to chip off? How much can I afford? And it always should be growing as your business is growing. And even in your goal initially, in my opinion, should be, to spend as much as you can to acquire as many clients as you can. And that's a hard concept to grasp for most people, but I would spend $1 today to make $1.01 tomorrow off of it. Now, I'm not going to tie up $1 to make $1.01 10 years from now.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, if I'm barely breaking even initially, I'm okay with that long term. It's hard for most people to do that. So you have to come up with like a segmented budget, and here's, so we call it the crosshairs of advertising. It's like if you hit people in different areas, like billboard, TV commercial, Facebook video, whatever, you're hitting in multiple places, you're going to get more people coming in initially. But the biggest mistake people make, and the same concept with lead buying, is they quit at some point.
Yes. Right.
They say, okay, I'm, that advertising, I feel it slowing down, or I feel like I'm getting a few less results off these leads. I gotta cut it off, or I'm going to lose my money.
Yep. And
that's not the case long term. Like, even if you have a bad week, like even if I'm advertising, we're pumping, right now, monthly, we're pumping, 25, 30,000 a month in advertising. If I have a slow week, do I go and chop that in half?
Nope.
Make up for it? No, you can't. And I know it's hard for younger agents to understand it, especially with no residual or, but you just have to, it seems like everybody has great weeks early on.
Yep.
So you get these agents that come in, say final expense, and they're like, my first week I wrote, 10,000 AP.
Right.
You did that. You're not rich. And if you made, if you wrote 10,000 AP that week, and I don't know why that is, but early on, at least a lot of these agents I think it's because they're selling to some relatives mixed in with some lead flow because they bought into the concept initially. So they're making more that first week than maybe they normally are going to make habitually. So early on, they should be siphoning off a little war chest of money so that later on they can't say, well, I can't buy leads because I don't have any money and I had a bad week. Because I've spent it all. But I see a lot of these guys go out and buy a watch after they had one good week. And,
right.
It's stupid.
Yeah. I always I see somebody online, they're like, someone's like, hey, I had, I've been averaging $5,000 a week, which is a good week for any final expense agent, right? And they'll go, well, what kind of leads are you working? I want to try those out. And then they go try them for 1 week. And if they work, these are the best leads in the world.
Right.
And if they don't make it, they're like, that's the worst idea. Like, Nick, you're an idiot. Why did you send me to RGI? Like, those are the worst. But Nick's making tons, right?
I have the same. So here's a couple things I'll say about leads. First, when we had tried to roll out like some sort of lead program, which I've really just backed away from, people's expectations are too crazy. But if someone wanted to do a lead review for leads that we were offering, and they're like, can I get a discount on these leads to do a lead review? I was like, I really don't want you to do a lead review based off 10 or 20 leads. I mean, how do you really know what works off 10 or 20? Second thing I'll say is I'm friends with guys that run really, really large, Medicare practices, much larger than ours as far as, I wouldn't say with profitability, but much larger as far as number of enrollments, that have a lot of agents working for them. And they're so sophisticated that they can run disposition reports on the closing ratio of each individual lead source, and even break down that lead source to where they know if it's Facebook from campaign X that, it's closing at this rate. If it's Google from Indiana, it's closing at this rate. They can break it down, like all the data. And I can tell you that they have told me that if the agents don't know where the lead source is coming from, that they close almost every lead source they get at the same percentage. But as soon as they know where the lead source is, they start to complain, well, Facebook leads are harder to close.
They just want to point fingers.
But they don't tell them that they're Facebook leads. They make them think they're Google leads. They close them at the same time.
Yeah, when I first started, I didn't know what a lead was, and someone gave me a walk list, like a mailing list, and and I had no clue. And it was just
there's thousands of leads.
It was it was 50, and they told me like this one sheet of 50 names and addresses were the leads, and I was like, this is gangster. I was like banging on doors. I sold 4 out of my first 6 because they would answer the door, and they'd be like, I didn't sell anything. I'm like, well, this says you did, so I'm coming in. Right. And I got in and I would sell the lead.
Well, we call it, me and Medicare Bob have a coaching group that we're doing right now to help people in it. Like y'all had Garrick on last night talking about something, or you did, Matt. And Garrick's one of our Medicare Monsters coaching group guys, and he's awesome.
He gave you a shout out. I don't know if you watched or not.
I was trying to find because people were tagging me in it, but I was watching for a little while. But so when we're talking about those different lead sources, Medicare Bob always has some insight on it too, because they do a ton from Facebook. I know what I was thinking. Waylon, I did an interview of him. He started like that, where they would have a lead list like you're talking about, just like a list of 50, and he was selling cancer policies. He actually wasn't recruited on the live side. He was recruited to go sell these, like, I don't remember the company. It was kind of like Liberty National cancer policies or something.
Yeah.
But he would just go and knock, like he'd go into a neighborhood where they give him a list, but he would knock every door, whether they were on the list or not. Mm-hmm. And he said what he would find out is, like, say he walked in and he finally found like somebody was sold an American Memorial final expense policy. Well, he would say, well, okay, if this person bought an American Memorial Final Expense policy, I bet you there's more people in this neighborhood with an American Memorial Final Expense policy, because the way those guys do it is they work these neighborhoods at a time. So then he would knock on every door and then start saying, I'm here to shop your, life policy. A lot of people are overpaying with, maybe American Memorial.
Right.
And then, but he would get in the door and find, if in this little small neighborhood, one person had it, 6 or 7 more people had it. So it become like a little honey hole. But it is funny, like how many people can do that. And I think I was trying to think, Bob had said something about working. And I don't know if y'all have ever gone on ageleadstore.com, but there you can buy like final expense leads on there. If they're 90 plus days old, you can get them for like a quarter a piece if you buy 1,000 of them.
Right.
I honestly think people have really good luck with those rewarming them.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're doing them over the phone, you got to get into TCPA compliance laws, but you can do the 30-day old ones or the 30 to 90-day old ones, and they're still like $1 or $2 a piece. If I was broke as a joke and was starting all over,
Absolutely.
I'd be going on there and buying a huge list of those up, and
yeah, my younger brother just started in the insurance industry, and they think that he's getting like some special treatment because he's like my brother.
Yeah.
But I'm giving him age leads, and this dude's like door knocking and like, setting appointments on 30, 45-day-old leads or whatever. And he's crushing. I think his first month he did $12,000, and he's on track to do about $11,000 this month.
Wow.
On age leads completely.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not in the house with him or anything. He'll call me from every house because he's still learning, but he's figuring out. But he doesn't know the difference between a fresh lead and an age lead. I just gave him the leads and said, call these. This is what's going to happen.
We actually worry. Sometimes we spoil an agent with high quality leads. Like when I tell people that, we have agents that are writing, 50 apps plus a week in AEP. Well, they're not working the same leads that most agents are. They're working extremely high quality traffic that took us years to cultivate, So I don't expect that from anybody else. And so as we hire other agents that aren't working those same leads, now they get paid differently too, because I'm not going to pay you the same as the guy that's out there like beating down doors to find people to buy something. They're going to get, a much higher chunk of that because they're, out there doing that. So it's like you can do just as much volume sitting there for us, and then you could make as much out there, but probably not because it's hard.
Right.
It's and so that's something I always think about this when I'm on these interviews is when people start demonizing LOA shops, I'm like, we have LOA guys that work for us, but I think they're pretty happy, and they probably make than a lot of these GAs that demonize LOA shops. And we're not like massively recruiting all over the world as an LOA shop. We're recruiting people that we can actually support with lead flow and office space and branding and things like that. There unfortunately are groups that recruit people in LOA and offer them nothing, and
Right.
then and then no system, nothing other than we own your book.
Right.
Go, here's your 50 names.
Right. And that's really the problem with LOA is like, if you're new and you don't know anything about the industry, 99% of the time, if somebody offers you an LOA contract, they're trying to screw you over.
Yeah.
Like, and that there are the exceptions. There's other people out there, but if you don't know any better, it's better to just stay away from that because you don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And
that's why, like, we'll have people that'll come and they're extremely green. Like they'll message me on Facebook and they're like, I'm in somewhere so-and-so Florida, and I really want to get into insurance. I like y'all talking about Medicare and health, and I think I want to do that. And sometimes they're so green that I really do think that if they had like a local agency like ours there, it would be a better fit for them, at least until they decided they learned the business. And they may, if you find a good one, like our guys are, most like people that I'm friends with that have LOA agencies, they have people in the agencies making high 6-figure incomes, just sitting there, never having to buy their own leads, never do anything else. They're completely happy with it,
Right.
But then there's other ones that there's, when you're LOA for nothing. And I've even seen people be like LOA for something as small as, a CRM, And I'm like,
Eek.
okay, like you could buy Radius Bob for $19 a
Yeah,
month.
right.
So,
It's
you know,
crazy.
but, you know, our guys, of course, they get to use our office, our internet, our printers, our paper, our name brand on their cards. They even get their leads coming from the inbound lead flow, all that kind of stuff. So it's a whole different
It's a
kind
whole different thing. Yeah, I mean, and that's no different than a lot of, and I still think it's a good idea for brand new agents to go work for a traditional captive company. I mean, that's where I came from. That's where I learned a ton of how to work in insurance. You know, not like presentation or specific final expense skills, because I didn't come in doing final expense. I came in working for a supplemental health insurance company, and doing like that, and then doing med sups, and that's how I started.
Yeah.
But I did have, top sales trainers going out and like spending a week with me and going around house to house with me and sitting with me and talking to me about how things went immediately after we walked out of the house. And
Yeah.
and I and you don't get that a lot from any non-captive type of a situation, because nobody, I mean, people like Matt don't have the time to go sit down and spend a week with every single individual agent that's going to come through their door.
And he used to, but now he's having to probably build a web of other
Right.
agents that he can kind of assign you.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly right. I used to be able to fly across the country, go spend a week with multiple agents and train in the field with them, and 2 days for every agent. But it just, I don't have time anymore.
Yeah.
I have to build up managers that I know I can trust, that when I put an agent with them, they're going to get the same level of training that they would have from me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes sense. And that's better for that agent too, because that person probably has more time for them until they get maxed out. But so it has to be a little bit of a web, there's unfortunately a lot of people that hand out contracts, and don't get me wrong, I'll hand out a contract if people ask for it. I don't go around like, hey, you want this, you want this, you want this. There was a time where I did a little bit like early on, and then I was just like, this is a waste of time. But now what we end up getting at our level and brand name is you get some bigger outfits that are just wanting to pick up, a couple of contracts, and they're kind of like not in love with their current upline. So they're watching some of my training or something. They're like, hey, you're the one training me on it. Can you give me that Manhattan Light? Or can you
Yep.
And I end up picking them up for these, non-standard products. And then over time, you build a relationship with them just off of those. And some of them are like, hey, you know what? I think I want to start the process of moving my Aetna Cigna to you. And I've picked more up that way. That's been the most profitable recruiting. Now, the only thing is those high-level producers, you're giving them such good compensation on the front end that the override's really skinny. So it's not like you're making a fortune. But for us, it's all been about padding our own production as well, so that we can negotiate better deals for us as an agency. And then everybody kind of grows with you. So. Yeah,
essentially, I mean, just like that, like you talked about, like over time, people that they find value from will just come to you and say, hey, I've been learning from you for a while. I think I owe it to you to give you my contracts for you to make some money as well. Yeah. But at that point, you've already built them up. Even though the margin is skinny, you're still going to make decent money, and you don't really have to train them as much anymore because you've done the work at the front end.
I prefer those relationships unless they work in my office. Then I can commit more time to train them because I have like that internal vested interest, and I know that the only reason that they wouldn't be successful in my office is if they were incapable of it. And so far, I haven't found anyone who's incapable of producing in our office. I've had my doubts about a couple that proved me wrong. So,
but it's the same thing as branding. When you build your brand out for what you've done on the brick and mortar, you've already given out the content. You've already built the brand. So when people are coming to you, it's not really longer of a sales process. They're coming into your office. They're waiting for you. And then they get invited to the back office to sit with you. And they're like, this is the guy from the billboard.
I almost feel like it's like, so it's like they're going into the Social Security office with us.
Exactly.
I mean, they don't feel like it's a sales process. But once you help them with Medicare, we do a decent amount, or trying to do a lot more annuities and life insurance. I do more probably like, universal life than final expense. I get a lot of people that are coming in and they're losing like, these group life insurance policies that are going to expire in 5 years, but they're $150,000 policies, and these people are 64.
Right.
Which those cases are good because sometimes like the premium's $300-400 a month.
Yep.
At once. Of course, then you longer underwriting window.
Right.
But we do more of that, off of them cross sales.
Yeah, and it's and so that's, but I mean that is a really nice system to have, but it takes time and it takes effort to build that up.
Yeah.
So for guys that are watching this channel that are just looking to get something started, maybe they've been working for a couple of years, but they're just buying leads, they're doing their own thing, and just one-off transactional type of deals. Where would you say people should start if they're looking to try and
I would say
locally?
The initial thing would be, if you're in the window buying leads, which I think is phase one. Anybody that's not at least buying leads is not in the industry.
Up and on your feet and making money and buying leads.
So if they're doing that, then first thing you need to do is start at least an Excel spreadsheet or a CRM based for keeping all of their client data in it. Mm-hmm. Even like PDF uploads of everything. I would do that now. Don't waste any more time not doing that or creating paper files or any of that stuff, no matter how big you are. You are a business. You're an individual. You're a business. You want to grow. Even if you want to be a one-man show, you still want to be, grow into a better one-man show. I would immediately start doing an email list. I would ask for the email every time. I think that the early stuff is just getting all the data. Don't let that old lady tell you that she doesn't use that email she has. If she's got it, get it.
Right.
Get the email, build out the email list. As soon as you can afford it, buy MailChimp, or you can do MailChimp for free up to like 3,000 emails or something. So go ahead and start storing them in there. And it's so easy, like drag and drop emails. Go in there, create a YouTube video, email it out to people. Just start doing that. And don't think of it as like, I want to see the return on it. Just think, I'm going to commit 2 hours a week to make it. Doesn't have to be the greatest video in the world. The stuff we're doing right now is not groundbreaking as far as video. Like this is easy. Anybody could go and do it. Go and, do some of that. And that way you can kind of start your data system. I would think the next step would be sending out a paper newsletter to all your customers. If you're in the life insurance side, and this can be completely, segmented to however you want to do it. Let them know, hey, these are other things we do in your newsletter. Or, I would make it informative, like where people want to read it. Things changing in the life insurance industry. Put an article in there about a life insurance company that got sued or something. I don't know. Anything that's interesting. That's the kind of stuff that gets me. I see those emails come through like $1.2 billion lawsuit. What did they do?
Right.
But do that newsletter and put your big face up there. Doesn't matter how pretty you are. Just put a big picture of you up there and put all of your info. And I would start sending those magnetic business cards. I think that that's an integral, easy part where you commit. Just plan for that it's going to cost you probably $500-600 per 1,000. It's not like mailing a lead card. It's you're actually getting a magnetic card and a custom piece of paper, and you're mailing it one way. So it's not the same cost. It's a little more expensive than mailing. Everybody speaks per 1,000 on the direct mail. They're like,
right.
If you can't get them for $360, it's like it's not the same thing at all. Right. You're actually mailing them information, things that you want them to hold on to, you want them to read, you want it to generate a few calls, but mostly you want it to be branded that you are their agent. It wasn't a transaction. You didn't just exist in their living room for a minute and convince them to buy something and they're never going to see you again. So you want to create that long-term relationship that way. The next kind of step that I would take aside from that letter is eventually, as I got more money, if that system was working already, the direct mail, I would hire a secretary first before I went into more advertising. Because the secretary can make client phone calls for you, can appointment set from leads, can do all kinds of stuff for you to start helping, do things. And then also have whatever your dedicated phone number is, she can answer it to try to shield you from being able to sell as much as you can. Then the next step for me would be to try to start hedging direct mail into branded advertising. So even if you think Facebook leads don't work, if you're running them, not buying them, but if you're running Facebook leads of some sort, even if you pay a service to do it, if they're using your Facebook page, videos with your stuff, and you're building up likes on your page, you're building out a digital asset. The verdict on the value of that is still out. I don't know. But it's better than the direct mail where you're just building target leads, book of age leads to sell. And then, after that, I mean, you can get into some of the print advertising, but it's a slow scaling process. It is a marathon, not a sprint, and it's a long marathon. I mean, I would think, if somebody had no seed money and was trying to go from zero to where we are right now, you'd be looking at a very committed 6 to 10 year window to get to that, at least. I mean, that's just, and that's where, I mean, that's committed. That's reinvesting your profits. And you could do it a little faster if you had some sort of seed money. If you inherited $100K and wanted to start, I could probably do something with that,
Yeah.
That's not most people. So,
Right.
And just have, and then you don't have to do my level of production to be extremely profitable either, because I remember our expenses are a lot more than those people's. So I know plenty of one-man shows with a secretary making $400,000 or $500,000 a year, just them. You can do that, especially if you get into annuities. If you do Medicare and annuities, I'm telling you, that's the sweet. If you want to be the top individual producer, you want to do Medicare and annuities. That's, of course you do some life insurance stuff, but if you find those, all you got to do is find one or two of those annuities a month, and
pays for the branding.
And that's your, and then the Medicare just becomes your gravy, and the life insurance will come in that because people need the life insurance as part of that whole situation. So.
I got a question back to branding. Like you said, magnetic business cards. I've been in a lot of houses in final expense. And you know what I've seen the most of?
What?
Calendars from all state agencies or whatever. And it's got the person's, it's got the person's name, it's got the person's number and their big old picture. Yeah. Have you ever tried calendars? I mean, calendars are a year-long thing, right?
So we do a magnetic, and that's why they do that. We do a one-sheet magnetic calendar.
Okay.
Every month on it.
Got it.
It's got a little graph, and it shows the 365 days of the following year. So when we send it out in September, we're like this year, we'll be sending out 2021's calendar. And yeah, they keep it on there because they use it as a reference point.
You know what I would think to do is to build one that says, if you're on Social Security, here's your Social Security bill dates for the year. People would definitely keep that on their fridge at all times.
Then they have like it has like that day of the month highlighted or whatever.
Correct. So they know exactly when they're going to get paid, even though they know to just see it on the calendar when they go to their fridge and it has your name and information on it. I think would be helpful, but I don't know.
I would think it would be interesting to even like add like little, like at the bottom, useful numbers and put like, Medicare number, Social Security number,
right?
That kind of stuff. So that way they see some value in this.
They want to keep it
an advertisement for you.
Correct.
Keep it. That's why we have realtors around here. What they'll do is right before college football season, because we're in the SEC, they'll send out an Ole Miss and Mississippi State side-by-side football schedule magnet. And it'll have their stuff at the top, but it'll show the two teams around here that everybody's following's football schedule. And I see those all over the place. Now, the problem with those is they don't last a year because that football schedule is, 3 or 4 months tops. So
sure.
And then people are like, okay, or actually 2 weeks in, we lost both first games.
We're done with this. Right.
But yeah, the calendars do work. I'm not don't sleep on that. It's crazy, how much some traditional print media works. And when people say direct mail, people should also start thinking about mailing their own branded mailers. And please, for the love of God, don't let their first question be like, well, do I have to get CMS to approve that? And not if you don't put a bunch of dumb shit on there.
Well, but that's another thing. Like, one of the things that I know most of the guys that work at the IMO that I'm working at, a lot of them didn't want to do telesales. I'm kind of a freak in the fact that I don't like not working. It makes me really itchy. So I switched over and I started teaching myself how to do telesales to keep me from losing my mind. But a whole bunch of them for the first time ever said, hey, I've got this book of, 800, 1,000, 2,000 final expense clients that I've just never touched before at all. And they just went and pulled their data and they did a mail merge and stuffed envelopes themselves in their own living room and mailed them all out like a little one sheet. Hey, coronavirus has come. Hope you're doing okay. Give me a call if you need anything. And people are writing business off of that. Like, and it took them 20 minutes to develop and then probably a couple hours of envelope stuffing. And, writing business off their current client list, just, it's an easy thing to do. And it's a thing that I think a lot of people just don't ever think about.
Right.
They just don't do.
Yeah.
Especially final expense client agents.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be the first to tell you I was awful at it.
Yeah. Well, it's just the way that you're brought into the industry.
Yeah.
And you can learn outside of that. And then everybody, the best businesses are built by people that know that there's more than one way to do business. It's not, I've had final expense agency people, and part of this was a recruiting posture, but like when I'd have guys that were on the final expense side and they're like, hey, we want to start doing Medicare. And they weren't saying, I don't want to do final expense. It's profitable. So why are they stopping? But
right.
I'm already seeing these people, why don't I want to start doing Medicare and building out a residual base. And, when I would talk to them about it, and some of them would, actually ask, if it's worth it. And so I had to use some social proof, like, well, I don't know. You want to see what the residual compound income looks like?
Right.
And you can show them, and you can make it into a simple math problem. You don't have to make it into how much does our agency sell math problem. You could turn it into, if you write this many a week in 3 years, how much is your residual income now? And when you started showing people that, they were like, that's crazy. Well, the first thing some of them had done, this is early on when I was talking to some, is they called up, so-and-so that they work. I won't say who he is, but he's kind of a big wig in final expense guy. But he told them, he texted them because they sent me screenshots. You need to quit getting shiny object syndrome. There's no money in Medicare. And I was just like, oh my God. Like there's money in everything. Like all you could have said.
It wouldn't be around if there wasn't.
Right. He could have said there's, hey, you can't sell everything. It's best to focus on one thing. And I could have been like, oh, okay, yeah, there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
But you focus on the one thing that you want to focus on. And then I would have, fought that with the argument of, well, life insurance is your now money, Medicare is your retirement money. Like, let's, look at both. And honestly, it doesn't have to, if you're smart enough to learn the information, it doesn't have to be one or the other. They could go hand in hand. A lot of times you're talking to the same clients anyway. Mm-hmm. And then if they're already in your book for final expense, because they're book of business, super easy to reach out to them compliantly because they're already a client of yours. So anyway, it's just funny like how that gets combated, in the recruiting world. But there's a ton of misinformation out there, and I think a lot of people, whoever recruited somebody in, sometimes tries to shield them from any other thing. I happen to believe there's money in all of it. We're working on the P&C side, even as a potential avenue, or and I'm getting more into the annuity space. Early on, when I came in, my dad was an agent. And he was like, "There's no money in drug plans. There's no money in under 65 health. There's no money in blah, blah, blah." And all along I was just kind of like, yeah, but we should do it. We should do it. And it turns out there's money in all of it. And then the last avenue, he told me the same thing about financial advising, or like
annuities,
being like actual managed money.
Gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
Management.
But now, because of like the new fiduciary rules, it's actually gotten somewhat easier because the larger entities out there, like Advisors Excel, or some of these groups, they form their own managed money source, to where all you got to do is kind of pick up the Series 63, bring them the money to manage, and you get 1%
and you get the assets under management fee.
So and it allows you to move more and figure out more annuity situations. Because if you find somebody that's got $800,000, they don't need to put all that in an annuity.
No.
That would be a little.
That's a terrible idea.
But
150, 200, you know.
But yeah, they might need to put 25%, maybe even half of it to go into annuity if that's what they want to. But then if you could take the rest of it and have the managed money, the problem is if I say, okay, go tell your Merrill Lynch guy I want half the money he's managing for you, but I'm going to
Right.
annuity. Really, I got to get them to divorce him altogether.
Yeah.
Then if I can take that managed money and have somewhere to do it, and then ideally maybe I can even undercut his management fee.
Right.
That's where you can really get them. But so there's money in all of it, and I'm not saying go out and do everything, but as you're building a machine and you have employees and you can start to create new sections. And I've tried to get myself out of the daily sales grind to do more of the annuities, higher in life, that kind of stuff. And then, whatever agent brings it to me, if they're not comfortable doing it, I'll do it and they still get a cut of it, and I do all the work just for bringing me the lead.
Right.
So that's just kind of a system we've tried to build out, so that we can do more. But everybody can build it differently. It's not there's no one size that fits all in the industry, but there's a lot of money to be made by helping people at scale. I also hate talking about making money, even though I do it a lot, because the money isn't made by getting rich off the backs of a client or two. It's made by creating a system that can help thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. I mean, it's limitless. You can do it with hundreds of people, thousands of people, but you can't do it with 10 people. Ain't nobody getting rich. So I love when we run these Facebook ads and these guys, look, another ad to try to get rich off the backs, or like, we're not hurting you, sir. Like, we're trying to help you. Yeah, I might get rich in the process, but it ain't because of you. It's because I created a massive at scale business, So
I'm not worried about the one guy that's going to produce $83,000 this year, and half of it's going to fall off.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's not that guy that I really want to talk to. I'm looking for the people that are doing large amounts of business that want to manage and build a small agency that I can help do that. Like, that's my new focus, right? So kind of building that web of agents, but everything takes time. That's kind of what the point of the video is. It doesn't matter if it's branding, doesn't matter if it's like you're building your business, like he's talking about, guys. Just like over time, get better. Everything works. You just have to work it, right? That's the point. What about you, Nick? What were you going to say?
No, that's it. I thought that was a good capper. We should have ended it there.
Yeah, well,
now
there we go.
We've got this weird end thing going on now. This is
that's what Ryan's for. Hey, Ryan, together this one out. Timestamp. Yeah, but seriously, it was awesome having you on, Justin. Again, the last video we did with you was like super rushed. It was like the time zone we messed up, and I was like, we got to do another one with Justin, because Justin is awesome, but also he's one of the most hilarious insurance agents I've ever met in my entire life. I will go ahead and tell the story. I was it Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh? Where were we at? I can't remember.
Pittsburgh.
But he was up in the middle of probably 100 agents and just talking, and he goes, all right, guys, we're going to take a break. I got to take a pee. And he just walks off stage in the middle of everything. And I was like, this is the most funny dude I've ever seen.
I said it more like this: I got to pay.
Yeah, exactly. It was like straight Forrest Gump style. But, man, it was awesome having you on. And the stuff that you're dropping for everybody on this channel is going to be really helpful for a lot of people that are trying to figure out, how do I go from being just an everyday agent and just surviving into building our business and our brand. So it was awesome having you on it. And if you guys found value, leave a comment down below. Maybe Justin will go on there and answer some questions in the comments, or maybe we have him back for another one-on-one with either Nick or I, just answering some questions. So leave the comments down below. Give it a thumbs up.
Really helps.
It really helps.
You'd be surprised.
And we've already surpassed 600 subscribers. We're getting closer to 700. 2 weeks ago, we were at 450. So a lot of you guys are subscribing, but there's still 62% of you that are not subscribed. We know you're watching. Give us a subscribe. It helps a ton.
Maybe I'll interview you guys on my channel one day and backlink to this video.
That'd be great.
Love to have it. Would love to have it.
Keep an eye out for Justin's channel when we will be on in the future.
Yeah, we're gonna post your channel on there as well, on the back of ours as well. You might get some subscribers from it. So thanks again, guys. It's always awesome talking to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thanks, man.